With YouTube attacking alternative media, please consider supporting the channel via Patreon for just $1 per month. Link below. Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is the Mundane Matt channel, and today they announced the nominations for the 2018 Oscars. I don't really know what number it is. Ultimately, I don't necessarily care. The Oscars have been dead to me since the 2000 Oscars, when Trey Parker and Matt Stone lost out for Blame Canada to Phil Collins' track from freaking Tarzan. I know you might be thinking, Matt, come on, it's Trey Parker and Matt Stone versus Phil freaking Collins. Yeah, and ultimately I think you might be right, but it's Blame Canada. Blame Canada versus whatever song that was for Tarzan, a standard end of track Disney song. You know, I mean, if it was like Elton John for Lion King, I would have understood. But it was freaking Tarzan. Ever since then, I've just not been a fan. That being said, this cracks me up. Feminists are angry that Wonder Woman was snubbed at the Oscars. Now, this was a big thing, actually. Wonder Woman, when it came out in June, went on to earn about $800+ million worldwide. This huge, big, pro-female phenomenon raging through Hollywood. It's actually going to have long-lasting effects on Hollywood, and many people out there thought that this was going to be an Oscar contender. They thought that Warner Brothers was going to make the push for the Patty Jenkins-led film, or directed film, in order to get Best Picture nomination, or Best Actress nomination, or Best Something nomination, because, you know, as they like to say in all the Women's March, the future is female, and they thought that Wonder Woman would lead the way. Here's the thing, Wonder Woman is a fun movie. I enjoyed it immensely. I've seen it a couple times now, but every time I watch it, I see more and more of the flaws held within. It's a very simple, standard comic book origin story. Nothing there that ultimately boils down to being Oscar worthy. So it not being nominated entirely makes sense to me. However, when feminists are told no, they like to and that is where we find ourselves right now. Now, the Oscar nominations were released today, and while they're rife with social justice warriorism, which is in some cases true, the Academy did neglect to nominate perhaps the most social justice-driven film of the year, Wonder Woman. I don't necessarily believe that that is the case. Wonder Woman in and of itself was not social justice-y, right? It wasn't her fighting for women's rights or anything like this. She fought for love. She fought for duty. That was her entire idea. It was about love. Okay, love is not a social justice warrior concept. I'm sorry, the Daily Caller. I know you're going to want to run with that angle in order to be able to do that. But at the same time, this movie suffered from a lot of the same problems, ultimately, that Ghostbusters did in terms of how the press handled it. Now, the press wanted to run with it, and the press wanted to make it this big feminist icon, pro-social justice warrior movie. Truth be told, even though it is a pro-female film, given that it is Wonder Woman, that ultimately wasn't the ideas that were expressed in the movie. It really wasn't. You had a Native American named Chief, who was over there as a smuggler in World War I, right? Like, I mean, there was a couple lines there that they were hinting at what's gone on in the past concerning our country, but ultimately it was in passing. It wasn't a main plot focus. Now, it says here the feminists aren't happy about the movie being snubbed. Despite nominations going to such films as Boss Baby for Best Animated Feature, I don't know why. That movie was horrible. Suicide Squad for Best Makeup. Hey, it won Best Makeup, by the way, last year. Wonder Woman didn't even receive a nod in the editing, sound editing, costuming, or makeup categories. Typically the only categories superhero movies ever get nominated. And it definitely wasn't nominated for Best Picture, even though every radical feminist in America had it on their short list for statuette. That's true, they did, but the thing was, you could kind of tell what was going to happen when you're looking at like the Screen Actors Guilds and the Emmys and the Golden Globes and stuff, and the fact that like that it wasn't even nominated, right? Or it wasn't even a big deal. Nothing won. James Franco was won Best Actor at the Golden Globes. He wasn't even nominated for the Academy Awards, and you bet your ass it had everything to do with the accusations levied against him that night. So, I mean, this is where Hollywood is right now, and Wonder Woman not getting it is actually the next big thing to make them lose their collective minds. It says here, as is typical for social media feminists, they made their feelings about the snub known. Gal Gadot Best, that Twitter says, Wonder Woman was not nominated in any category for these Oscars, but we know that despite all this, the film was more than a movie. It was a real masterpiece, also carrying a very important message. The recognition will not come from these Oscars, but from those of us who supported them. And that is a true statement. That is, you can't deny that is a true statement. The movie is more than just an Oscar film. It's a good comic book movie. It's a good DCEU movie. People more often than not tended to really like it. But when it comes to Hollywood, when it comes to recognition amongst their own, this is where the Oscars come into play. And if DC would have really pushed for this, if Warner's would have paid out the money for the marketing campaign, because that's ultimately how these movies are nominated, by the way. It is a lot to do with how much money studios put out to push their product. Then the movie probably would have had a better shot. It just didn't, and that's perfectly fine. But you have to love the salt that's kind of flowing from this. Like, why? What do you mean it wasn't recognized by the industry as a whole? It was, just not in an award sense. Like, that's the other thing too. The movie did very well with response from critics and people inside the industry. So it's so funny when, like, it's the Oscars ultimately are just a pat on the back from the industry to itself. You know what I mean? Like, that's all it is. People take this way too seriously. Now, Rebecca Keegan here says the lack of Oscar noms for Wonder Woman has to be disappointed for the Oscar show producers. That's a movie that attracts a TV audience who might not otherwise watch. Well, yeah, the Oscars have had dwindling viewership for years. Oh no, she twidn't says here, instead of just nominating Christopher Plummer for an Oscar, we should go back and take every Oscar away from every sexual predator and melt them from a statue of Wonder Woman lassoing a dick. Again, this is, Gary Oldman was nominated and he won the other night at the Screen Actors Guild for Best Actor. Many people out there were thinking that, there's been reports of abuse from the past. And that, is something that should completely destroy everything that he's ever done. This is where we are right now. This is why what Hollywood is going through is an absolute witch hunt. They won't acknowledge it. They won't admit it, but the rest of us know that it's true. This one here said, Hoovie in Holland, Wonder Woman was robbed an Oscar nomination. And that's not even a cognate sentence. Wonder Woman was robbed an Oscar nomination. Maybe. I don't know. I would have worded it differently. Anyway, and it says, now Wonder Woman wasn't a bad movie. It wasn't great as it was made out to be. More like a gender-swapped Captain America, but it's also no 3 billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri. Fun films, crowd-pleasing films often don't get nominated for Oscars because they just don't live up to the Academy's idea of what a film should be. Also, just because feminists like it doesn't make it art. Well, that's not entirely true. Some feminists out there would remind you that period art is a thing that I do believe is sold in some circles, like on Etsy. So there's that. But yeah, the movie was good. It's not Oscar caliber good, but ultimately, what is Oscar caliber these days? Hollywood is in such a very, 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 very weird state right now when it comes to what constitutes a good movie. They like what they call Oscar bait. Oscar bait are films that come out towards the end of the year and ultimately don't reflect the mindset of the movie-going public. I mean, Logan, for example. Logan is my favorite picture of 2017. I think the movie should have absolutely been nominated, and it was for Best Original Screenplay. And or Best Adapted Screenplay, I think. And so, yeah, it got nominated for that. And it's because it's a good story. It's a good deconstruction story of Wolverine's final days. And it was well done, well executed. A far better film overall than Wonder Woman. I mean, a far better film. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, when dealing with the complex themes of family and what it means to be a parent and or father, and dealing with that from the concept or from the lens of a comic book movie, and also having excellent and amazing special effects, those that would outpace Wonder Woman time and time again, not even nominated. So the Oscars aren't going to look at movies like comic book films necessarily as being a big thing. It's been 10 years almost since it's been 10 years as of yesterday since Heath Ledger died, and he won Best Supporting Actor after he passed away for The Dark Knight, a role that he very much deserved an Oscar for. And ever since then, I feel Warner's has been chasing it and other people have been wanting it too. But this wasn't the time and this wasn't the place. And that's perfectly fine. Maybe Wonder Woman 2 will be a more complete movie with more complete thematic elements that will definitely play to what the Oscar considers a contender. But any way you look at it, Wonder Woman 2, when it opens in December of 2019, is going to be a massive, massive success. And when that happens, Hollywood will definitely take notice, and probably when it gets snubbed again, they'll do the exact same thing. And of course, I'll talk about it because That's just what I do. But what do you guys think about this? Do you think Wonder Woman had any elements of it that were Oscar worthy? Did you even like the movie? Did it live up to the hype, or was it just another comic book movie that came out and that you forgot about? These are things I'm curious to know, so go ahead and let me know in the comments. My name is, of course, Matt Jarbo. This is the Mundane Matt channel. If you haven't already, thumbs up the video, subscribe, check back often for more content from me. If you want to support the channel, the best way to do that is Patreon. Right now, YouTube is literally just like crushing all of our channels, so anything helps out. Or if you just want to, mundane Matt and chill, you can do so right now.